Hope that everybody had a wonderful lunch. We're going to go ahead and get started and resume our programming today. I have the honor of kicking off the back half of the day, and in doing that, I'm going to introduce one of our guests, who's our feature speaker for today. When Steele first started working with the Selerix platform, which was early in 2015, one of the first things that we did is send several of our key team members down to Texas to learn to build these cases so that we could come back and provide these services for you all. And one of the first people that I ever met at Selerix was Ruthie Gray. And it was, I didn't know at the time that, what a great asset Ruthie would be for us and just how important she is to Selerix. Ruthie's role today is she is the Vice President of Product for Selerix, which basically means all of the different platforms and modules that you might choose to use for your company. Ruthie's job is oversight of those modules and the delivery of such. And so, as you might guess, Ruthie is an amazing resource. So she is a person that, as we have Q&A today, if there's anything that you want to know about why it is the way it is with the platform today, what's coming tomorrow, she's just a great and fantastic asset for us to have here in person with us at the event today. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ruthie Gray.
All right, thanks a lot, Wes. I'm still a little amped from riding in the street racing cars, so excuse me if I start talking too fast, just say slow down because that was awesome. And if you aren't planning on doing it, change your mind and plan to do it because it's so cool, so cool. Okay, so as Wes said, I'm VP of Product Management at Selerix. Am I too close to that? That means a lot of things. I wear a lot of hats, but the biggest one I wear is coming up with our roadmap, which means what should the software do next? When are we going to make that happen? What's going to change? And I do that by talking to people like y'all on a regular basis. So I'm really excited to have a big group of HR professionals using the software. I'm looking forward to getting some feedback from y'all when I can. I'm looking forward to sharing what we have here. A little bit of background on me on how I came into this role. I did my master's work in organizational psychology, which I thought I was going to go into HR. And I went to a company called EDS, Electronic Data Systems, that's not around anymore. It was Ross Perot's old company, for those of you who are closer to my age. And my boss there said, "You're going to write code." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to do HR." And he said, "No, I think you're going to write code." And EDS had a program at the time where they would send you through and teach you how to write code. And I thought he was crazy, but it turned out I was actually pretty good at it. And so I became a software developer for EDS when I thought I was going to be an HR professional. But I still kind of have that. And so fast forward, I stayed home with my kids for 10 years and came back. And guess what? You don't get to develop software after you stayed home for 10 years. You don't know what's going on anymore. So coming back into the workforce 12 years ago, I found myself lucky enough to find a software company that works with software for HR professionals. So I could take the knowledge I had of software development and the process, what I knew about HR, organizational psychology, the things that go on in HR, and I was able to find a great place for it. So I've been really thrilled to be with Selerix. It's been a great fit. We're growing. I was the 12th employee, and now we have about 110. As Wes mentioned, we license with over 30 carriers. Multiple resellers like Steel Benefits, and we're just always looking to see what we can do to make your lives easier. So I think I have this turned on. See if I can make this work. All right, our current roadmap includes two main areas of focus. One is an improved user experience and the other is integration. I'm gonna focus on this user experience first. And I really, really wish that I'd been able to come up here with my laptop and plug in and do a demo of a prototype we have for something that's coming on in 2022 that's called the HR experience. HR experience came about when I was talking to someone just like one of you. Selerix is based in the Dallas area, and one of the larger school districts in our area is a client of ours. And their HR manager said, "Can I talk to someone about the system?" And went up through the broker and through different people, and we ended up having a meeting. And she really kicked off this idea, this was about 4 years ago, of what Lindsay showed you earlier about how to look up an employee, how you find that information is not that easy for you. We developed it kind of with a software mind rather than what makes sense. What do you do with the system on a daily basis? What do you need to look up when you're looking up an employee? What's the information you want to see and how do you want to see it? And so I had a number of these types of conversations going on. And this project was originally supposed to kick off in February of 2020. Yeah. And so then we shut down and we said, wait, we have to stop all of that. And we have to come up with virtual enrollment aids. We have to add chat in and do things for all these enrollers that have to be at home. So my HR experience got put on hold. We did some virtual enrollment stuff and I'll talk about that and where that's going in a minute. But I said in 21, I've got to get back to my HR experience because I've been talking about this for years and I'm really excited. I have a team that's actually working on developing this. They've been working for about 6 months now. I expect we'll be rolling out a beta version of it in January. It's a big project. What this is, so think of when you look up an employee, right now you've got something like 12 tabs you can go through. We're narrowing that down. There's one tab that is the overall current view. As you scroll down this page, there's islands. One of the islands is about their employment data. One of the islands is about their personal contact information. There's an entire section with their benefits listed right there, their current benefits, what their costs are, who's covered under each one. You know how she showed you earlier to find out the individual's covered, you click and then you click and then you click and then you click and then you click. And then don't delete it there because you'll screw things up. Yeah, you're not going to do that anymore. You'll be able to see it in one place. You'll be able to see when dependents came on and off of coverage. If someone had a life event in the middle of the year and their child came on the coverage on April 1st, they'll have a different date for that child. You'll be able to see when that child actually came on the coverage. This is the important thing that you need to know when you're looking up employee data on their benefits. All their forms are still on that same page, a different island. All of their beneficiary listings are still on the same page, a different island. Any documentation that's been uploaded is right there. One view, and that entire page can be printed and it will output a PDF. So someone comes into your office and says, I need to understand what my benefits are. Very simply, you look them up, you hit print, you hand it to them. The second tab you'll have is a history. And that history tab combines a lot of the tabs that we currently have. So it's going to take together their enrollment sessions, which live on one tab right now, any work history changes if they move from location to location, department to department, salary changes, et cetera. Those will all be on this tab. Anytime that they've made a change to any of their benefits, anytime they've updated their personal information, when their salary has changed, et cetera, history all in one place, able to be filtered, sorted, searched. Then the third tab is around starting a life event. And I know Lindsay and Mike spent a long time talking about life events. We're going to talk about more today. And I'm telling you, in 2022, it's going to change. So listen to it because you need it for this year. But in 2022, it's going to change. We're going to start out, it's more of a workflow. So start out saying, what are you trying to do with this life event? Are you trying to add coverage, remove coverage, or modify coverage? Because you're doing one of those three things all the time. That's the reason you're going into your benefit platform, to do one of those three things. After you do that, to say, who are we doing that for? Is it the employee or one of their dependents or both? Cool, you pick the people. Based on those answers, we know what are valid life events for the way your group has been set up. For example, if you said, I want to add coverage for a dependent, it might come up with a list that says, I've had a new, there's a new child, there's an adoption, there may have been a divorce and now you're covering someone that you didn't cover before, all of the possible things that can make you add a dependent to some coverage. You choose the one you want. Fill in all the information that goes with that. If it's a birth, you're putting in, when the child was born, what kind of documentation is going to be provided. But then here's the difference. At that point, you're going to be able to say, I want the employee to upload their documentation. So I want to send them an email. And just by clicking a button, it automatically sends the employee an email with a link. And the employee can follow that link and go to that link and upload their documentation immediately. I know, right? That's the reaction I was looking for. Thank you so much. See, this is why I'm glad this is in person, because last year when this is virtual, I don't know if I would have gotten the squeal, but the squee was really cool. It was awesome to get. Then the really coolest part of it, I think. So right now in the system, when you do a life event, the last thing that happens is you get dropped into the enrollment, right? And you have to walk through the enrollment. You don't have to do that in all situations. If this is just that you're adding a child to their medical and their dental and dependent life, Why do I need you to go through the enrollment experience? Why can't I just say these 3 plans? And it showed me, here's what the cost will change for the employee. And for each of the plans that can change, I can say, yes, I want to make that change, or no, I don't want to make that change. Or you know what, I do want to review that. So I want to go into the enrollment experience so I can see the full page, maybe walk through some information with the employee. You'll have those options, and then you're done. Employees who have been sent those emails then land in a different workflow for you of ones that are pending documentation. It's going to be different than what Lindsay was showing you earlier for the pending documentation. This page will have a list of when the employee was emailed, what we're waiting on from them. Taking them out of that queue is going to be a lot easier. So these are things I've heard from y'all for years that are pain points, and I've wanted to fix it. And like I said, I'm so excited that I have a team that is dedicated to doing this right now. It's going to be called HR Experience. When it first comes out, it's going to be kind of an overlay on top of BenSelect. So you'll still have the old way of doing things, but you'll have the option to launch this new way. It's being built so it really uses all the same data that's in BenSelect. It uses all the same data structures. It's just a different view of looking at it. Okay, so it's just a better way of seeing it. At some point, we don't know what that time frame will be, the old way was going to go away. But I know that, especially in the benefits industry, there's a lot of people that are slow to change. Not HR, this is really more on the carrier side. People are a little bit slower to change. So we don't want to throw a brand new thing at you and say, everyone has to use this. But it's going to be the future of how it works. And I think this group in here is going to be my early adopters, and I really can't wait to see how it turns out. That's the first circle up there, HR Experience. Second is Virtual Enrollment Assistance 2.0. So like I said, last year when we shut down and enrollers all of a sudden said, I can't meet face-to-face with employees, what am I going to do? Especially groups that are not with a great company like Steel that provides the level of customer service and the call center, et cetera. We had a lot of users who really needed that ability. So we added in a chat functionality, and we added it in a way that employees could ask for help during enrollment. What this would do is it would put that employee in an area on the dashboard saying, I need some help. This is what I need help with. Then an enroller could reach out to them. Again, we threw this together. We're trying to get it out as fast as we could at that time. So there were a lot of things that we've looked at since and said, okay, that would have been cooler. Let's add that in. So this 2.0 is updates to that. So some of the things it's going to involve are the ability to set schedules. So this enroller is available at these times. I can say I'd like to meet with them for a 15-minute schedule. It's going to add times that the chat is available. That was a big thing that just didn't happen the first time. But right now, chat's either on or off. So if you have an employee who logs in at 3 in the morning and tries to chat, there's not going to be anyone there waiting for them, but they're going to still be able to try. This will turn the chat functionality off when no one's available. Also, the ability to send emails to people who subscribe to want to know when there's help. So whether that's someone in your office, whether that's an enroller from the carrier, whoever is wanting to be available to help someone at the call center, people will be able to subscribe to say, I want to know when an employee needs assistance with an enrollment, and they'll get an email at that time so they don't have to wait and watch on the dashboard. ACA improvements. I've been meeting with our internal ACA specialist a lot recently. This is something that's actually coming up right now. Some changes to dashboard views. So from the beginning, we'd envisioned nice graphic modules that could show you how many employees you have that are listed as part-time but are trending towards full-time hours, what your potential penalties may be based on the number of hours that people are working, who's reaching the end of their initial measurement period. So you might have to go in and make some changes based on what you've seen in that initial measurement period. So these are some graphs that are going to be added to ACA. Additionally, we're going to add the ability to be able to file with states directly within the system. So there's about 9 states right now that require their own state level ACA filings. Right now, we can generate the forms that they need, but we can't file through the system. You have to go out and do that through the state's governments, but we're going to have that integrated through APIs so you can file directly with those states. Any questions so far before I go on? I'm talking a lot. Okay. Starting to come down, losing my breath a little bit. Point of sale enrollment changes. This means things that the employee is seeing when they're making their benefits decision. So when they're going through their enrollment, how does the enrollment look for the employee? So some of the changes that are happening in this area, one of the big things that I really like is the ability to have all the beneficiaries collected at the end of enrollment rather than on a benefit plan basis. So right now, if your employee goes in, they choose basic life, pick your beneficiary. I also want term life, pick your beneficiary. I'm also going to choose this critical illness, pick your beneficiary. They have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. With this option, which is coming out within the next 6 weeks, people like your customer service managers here can say they only have to collect it one time. So at the end of enrollment, there will be a page they can say, these are the beneficiaries I want for all my plans. They could say, these are the beneficiaries I want for 2 out of the 3, and I want different ones for the 3rd. They'll be able to just do it all on one page right there. Thank you. See, I love the feedback. That's so cool. And this area up here, this is my fan club. I'll get you your badges later. Some other changes around there are really in just ways that we can offer some of the more complex products, the critical illness products, universal life that's sometimes offered. So one of the things about Selerix is we actually started as a way to enroll those voluntary benefits. That's our core, that's our DNA. Enrolling things like medical, dental, vision is actually very, very easy compared to how do I collect information for enrolling someone in a whole life plan, especially like an individual whole life plan. But our system was based on being able to do those very complex enrollments. And some of those, the ways that we originally said, okay, we're gonna take that data in, now we look at it and go, that's too complex. I know it's a complex benefit, but let's make it easier. So some of these other changes around point of sale enrollment are ways to make enrollment in something like an individual whole life easier for the employee, just better UX changes. And then self-service account onboarding, I cannot figure out the right phrasing for this. What I really mean is self-service employee onboarding. So rather than you telling your employees, you're going to log in with your social or your employee ID, and your PIN is the last 4 of your social plus the last 4 of your, plus the 4 of your birth year. Instead of that, you're going to be able to say, send an email to my employees inviting them to create a user account. The employee will get an email that has a tokenized link that is just for them, and it's only good for a certain period of time. When they click on the link, they will come up with their own username. They'll come up with their own password. They'll be prompted through verification steps to make sure that they can be reached. We need an email address or a cell phone number, some way that we can verify that this is actually you. They get the code, it comes back to them. Okay, great, now we know that this is a verified account. They can reset their password if needed. All the things that you see on any other web page that you go to with an account, you're going to be able to do here. I'm not saying it right there. I need to figure out the better way to say that. All right, any questions on the improved user experience? No? Okay, cool. Because this next one's big also. API integration with all. API just means a way for one software program to talk to another software program. That's all it is. The term API integration gets thrown out a lot nowadays, and people try to make it into, oh, it's this really complex, really specific thing. It's not. It's just a way for one software program to talk to another software program. Kind of like a door that you can go in. Okay, if I can send a message in through this door if I give it these 10 pieces of information, and then it can give me information back without having to get into the code itself. So it's just kind of a way for them to talk to each other. What we have currently set up with Paylocity is a great example of this. How many people in this are in the room or in groups? All right, you're my shill. I'm going to ask you questions. So when we have this kind of payroll integration, like I said, Paylocity is the first one that we did. It's been live for about a year. We are working on other payroll integrations. Paycor, NetChecks, Viventium are some others on the list. iSolved is also on the list. In these integrations, what this means is when you put a new hire in Paylocity, for example, within a minute, that employee is in Ben Select. You don't have to schedule a report. You don't have to wait for a report to get run. You don't have to double key anything. The employee just gets sent over. So then the employee goes in and they enroll. Within a minute, those deductions are back in Paylocity. You don't have to load a file into Paylocity. You don't have to wait for something to get scheduled. You don't have to double key anything. It just flows back and forth. We have a dashboard where you can go see everything that's been sent back and forth. So you can be sure. I know there are some people say, I like a file because I can look on the file and I can see that Mary Jo was on my file that went last Friday. Well, on this, you can go to the dashboard and you can see when Mary Jo was sent. You can also look up Mary Jo's record and you can see that she was sent at what date and time and what information was sent over. So it's a real-time integration. It's just two pieces of software talking to each other. Benselet's talking to Paylocity. Paylocity becomes a system of record for anything related to the employee's contact information, employment information, salary, all those kinds of changes feed directly into Benselect. Anything that affects their deductions, their benefit elections, if a salary change recalculated and gave them a new cost for something, et cetera, they cross an age band and so their rates may have gone up on a life. All that information Benselect owns and sends off to Paylocity. It's really a great system, and it's really a way we want to start looking at things. A few years ago, there was this really big push from a lot of the big HCM players saying, it's one piece of software that will do it all for you. And the fact of the matter is, all of the different things that are adjacent to benefits and HR, there's not one system out there that does it all great. There are a lot of systems that are great at individual parts. And we said, you know what, we're going to stand up and say, we're great at the benefits. We're not going to try and do payroll. We're not going to try to do decision support. We're not going to try to do billing reconciliation, but we'll integrate with people who are willing to integrate with us. And we'll work together as partners. And so our partnership that we've had with Paylocity has really been fantastic. I've been really happy to get to talk to Mike and Mike on this trip, find out how they're bringing more people on the platform, because it really is a game changer. When you're not having to wonder, okay, I just put this employee in the system. When does that new hire file go over to Benselect? When will they be able to enroll? Did my payroll get there in time? My file goes tomorrow. Did I get them in time? It just goes. It just happens. They talk to each other. So the top circle there, I know these circles are really small and they're really small on here also. I can hardly read them. But that top circle there on the integrations is around HCM and payroll. Like I said, we have some other ones on the roadmap. NetChecks is going to be rolling out here within the next couple of months. Paycor, we're in kind of a beta stage on, and we're working on Viventium and iSolved, trying to get a foot in the door with some others, but our goal is to hit all the big players there. Going clockwise around the circle is EOI, evidence of insurability systems. So carriers have their own evidence of insurability systems that are required to walk through for certain elections. We are currently integrated with 13 carriers' evidence of insurability systems. And what this means is at the time of enrollment, if your employees are enrolling in a plan from one of these carriers that requires medical underwriting, we don't have to wait. We don't have to say, go fill out this form and bring it back to HR. And then HR has to send it in. And then we wait to get the decisions. There's a single sign-on process. So during enrollment, we can actually send the employee their elections, any data we have on them, directly into the EOI system. They go through everything over there, and then it sends them back, and it's seamless. It looks like it's all taking place in the same system, but it's actually in two. So we have more of those coming this year. We're currently working with Reliance Standard, Symetra, what are the other new ones? Blue Cross Blue Shield's Dearborn division. I know they have quite a lot of business up in this area, but these are generally what you're looking at for your life plans. What we're talking about there. Moving on around, it says carrier and policy admins. So there's a committee that's formed by almost every voluntary benefit carrier that's out there, and a lot of the core benefit carriers as well, called LIMRA. It's been a big push on the LIMRA committee, on this committee within LIMRA for the last couple of years to develop a standards base of sending data back and forth. What this means is it's not that Guardian wants their data in one format, and Allstate wants their data in another format, and Aflac wants their data in another format, and Blue Cross Blue Shield wants their data in another format. It's one format that will work for all kinds of benefits. Their format is called LDEX, LIMRA Data Exchange. It's basically what it stands for. We completely support the LDEX format for sending data to carriers. And the cool thing about LDEX is it can be either in a file or via API. We can send real-time data at the time of enrollment. Carriers that have integrated with us using this, Trustmark is a really good example. Just like with a Paylocity, when your employee enrolls in a Trustmark product, we don't have to wait for a file to go over to Trustmark. Immediately, that election goes over to Trustmark. If Trustmark looks at it and says, oh, you know what, this wasn't offered exactly correct, we may want to make some adjustments and send it back, that happens immediately. So we're taking out that EDI, we're taking out that files, because the EDI connection is fantastic, and Selerix supports over 800 different EDI formats, and if we don't support it, we'll build it. EDI is not going away, but when we can take it away and get that real time, take out the timing issues, we really get big gains for our employees. Your employees aren't having to wait to see, can I go to the doctor? Did that go on a file over to the carrier yet? Do they know that I have this coverage? Do they know that I've paid for it? Because it's just immediate. So with carriers, we're working with the LDEX format, and we're bringing more and more carriers on every day to this. We're currently working with about a dozen carriers. In 22 is when the medical carriers have said they're going to adopt this as well. Right now, there aren't any medical carriers that are accepting this. It's only on the VB side of things. But in 2022, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, Aetna, Cigna, all the big UHC, all the big players have said they'll start accepting data in the LDEX format. It's just going to make getting your data back and forth a lot easier at that point. Enrollment platforms. There are some of these voluntary carriers that have their own enrollment platforms for their products, and that's absolutely fine. But we also don't want employees to have to go to 2 different systems. We don't want them to log into BenSelect to elect their medical, dental, vision, basic life, LTD, and then just for their critical illness, we don't want them to have to log out and log into Aflac's Everwell system, which is a really great system for their products. It really is. I'm a big fan. We didn't want them to have to log out and log in. We want it to just look like it's in one place. So we used API connections to launch Aflac's Everwell platform within our platform. It's seamless. It looks like it's the same system. They do their enrollment. We have the data, they have the data. We don't have to go back and forth. We don't need to make the employee log into 2 different places. It all takes place in one place. And there's a few other enrollment platforms that are coming to us with that this year as well. Billing, this is a huge one. I know Mike was talking about how he can help with some billing reconciliation. And there are definitely ways to do that, from running a file within the system and getting a file from your billing. But we're also working with some third-party billing administrators who have API connections, who have said, if you can send us the data on the deductions you have, they intake the data from the carriers already, and they do that reconciliation. We're working with a couple of partners on that right now. The first one that's going to be released here shortly is AdminiHealth. Really slick billing reconciliation platform that basically just comes through and says, here's where your differences are and how do you want to resolve each of these, and they resolve the differences for you. But they need the data from us, so we're integrating through API connection to them. Decision support. So decision support basically, means helping your employees decide what they should elect. What makes the most sense for them. BenSelect has some built-in decision support modules that are related only to medical. Our built-in modules are around a medical, and they're a financial decision. They're how much out-of-pocket costs will you have over the course of a year based on some information we have about you. And then based on that, which product should you elect? Should you get the high deductible health plan? So should you get the PPO? Should you get the HMO? Again, that one is purely financial, and that one's already built in. But there's some really cool companies out there that are doing some neat stuff with AI. And again, this is one of those places where Selerix said, we're not in the AI business. We don't want to be in the AI business, but there's companies that are, and that's adjacent to what we do. So let's work with those. So one of the ones that's already been released with this is a company called Naya. And Naya does this really slick intake of questions about your lifestyle and your financial health and how, do you prefer to save or spend? And they come up with a list of all the benefits based on what your employer is providing that you should be enrolling in, and gives you the exact amount. Not only get the medical high deductible health plan, but put this much in your HSA account, get dental for you and your spouse, get vision just for you because your spouse doesn't wear glasses, get critical illness to add on to your medical, get this accident coverage because you've got 4 kids who play soccer. They give you that level of detail of what you should do. What we developed with them is not only can we launch their platform from within BenSelect, so as you're going through the enrollment, you get these questions, but then they can feed those recommendations to us via API. which means we know what they recommended and we can show those recommendations as you go through the enrollment. So when they get to critical illness, it could say, by the way, remember NIA recommended that you get this for you and your spouse. When they get to the accident, you need full family coverage on this accident for you and your family because of this recommendation earlier. NIA is the first one. We're also working with other companies that are out there. I'm actually right now, I'm missing a demo with one that's called Perky. Funny name, but it's actually a very serious decision support. It's very much about your financial wellness. Really great platform. Again, all these are great platforms, and they're things that we don't want to be in the business of doing, but we know that you need it. So how do we pull it all together? And then the last circle up there is around CRM. This is kind of an interesting use case. A use case meaning how would you use the software? We've got some enrollment companies who have said we really want to be able to take in information on who enrolled in what, how long did they meet with enrollers, how much did they end up spending in premium with these different carriers. So they want to be able to feed information from BenSelect into the CRM. They also want to take information about a group setup from CRM and automatically build your case, like what Steel Benefits is doing for you today. Be able to feed in, these are what the rates are going to be. These are what who's eligible for this kind of coverage. So Salesforce is actually one of the first ones we're working with on them, on that topic. So it's a whole two-way integration. We're going to get case setup information from CRM and we'll send them who enrolled, how long they were with someone, what they spend, et cetera. API integration with all. Any questions on that? See, here's the problem with me coming out from racing and amped. I tap dance. You want me to do a little number here? I was going to show you a slide. I actually had a third slide prepared around Engage. And I wasn't clear on the fact that a lot of y'all have not seen Engage before. So I really don't want to blow the cover story by talking about what's coming next in Engage when a lot of y'all haven't even seen Engage for the first time yet. So I'm one slide short. I want to do the same kind of thing that Lindsay did earlier, though, because I have been with the system for 12 years. I actually started out building groups for the system. I ran training. I'm in charge of the entire system right now. What questions do you have, or what do you want to see, or what are your pain points? Because I know you have them.
So we're just getting started, as we've said before. So how much is it? This is exactly what we've been looking for years. Like, to find a company that does all of it together, we have walked away from 1 million vendor booths in the different places that we've been looking for HR. So thank you very much for that, number one. But how difficult is it going to be for us in the very beginning when we first start operating through all of this, and what should we expect? Yes. Explain the growing pains.
The question was around the growing pains when you first start up with an API integration. So all of our integrations are done through something we call our integration service module, and it provides a dashboard, like I mentioned, where you can go look up information. The growing pains involve kind of a couple of areas. First of all, making sure your two systems are mapped to the right areas. What I mean by that is your payroll company or your payroll setup might have the different, let's say if we're talking about a school district, your payroll system might have the different schools set up as cost centers. And in BenSelect, those are going to be locations. So we have to set up that mapping of when something comes in as a cost center from Paylocity, it means a location in BenSelect, and we have to map that. Sometimes those are not fully a one-to-one mapping, and sometimes we don't realize that until data starts coming over and we say, oh, look, they have this weird cost center that actually contains 3 schools, and those are set up as 3 different locations in BenSelect. So finding out all that is one of the growing pains. The goal is that is determined before you actually turn the integration on, okay? But in very complex groups, we sometimes see that all of a sudden data will come through and it shows up in the errors area of our integration page, and we say, what's going on here? Where does this data come from? And then have to go back after the fact and say, okay, now we're going to map this. And one of the things about Selerix, and I've tried to avoid using this term a lot, but since we work with the most complex of benefits, and we've always worked with very complex groups, there's actually something within Selerix called scripting that allows you to do just about anything. If there's not a button to do it or an option to do it or a check mark to do it, you can make it do it, because we give end users like Steele and their team access to every point of data that we have in the system and say, manipulate it however you want and tell us what you want to do with it. Okay, so we can actually use that scripting in this example that I gave, where one cost center actually comprised 3 different schools. And in Benselect, we need that as 3 different schools, because we actually do have slightly different benefits that are being offered to those different ones. We can handle that. We can take that in and say, okay, if the cost center is ABC, and some other field says this, then we're going to figure out that they go in this location. These people go in this location. It's rules-based, but if it's not a rule that we know about, we can still build it. Okay, so that's one of the biggest growing pains, is around the mapping. I'd say the other one, and Heather, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is trust. Making sure you trust the data that's going through. Because it's kind of scary to say, okay, I'm just going to turn this on and all of a sudden everything's live and it just goes. I mean, I'd be scared of that. So that's why we developed, there's a format that you can turn on integrations in called approval mode. It takes away that real time because it builds a queue. This is information that we're waiting to send to Paylocity, and this is information that Paylocity is waiting to send to you. And we're going to let you approve each transaction as it comes through, or you can batch approve them. And that helps with the trust factor. What we've generally seen from the cases that the Selerix team manages, which of our 17,000 employer groups on the system, we only manage about 200 of them, and they do tend to be some of the most complex ones. So we see kind of the crazy ones that our resellers and carriers don't want to work with. Not Steele. Steele never sends us any because they're awesome. But what we see is it's about a 6-week process to gain that trust. After 6 weeks, do you start going, okay, I know, yes, this person I put into the payroll, I know they're going to come across, I trust it, just let it go. And then it goes. So I really say those 2 pain points are in the setup, making sure that mapping is correct and that you understand how the 2 systems need to talk to each other, and then around just getting that trust factor. But a great question. Who else? Oh, I know there's pain points. You won't hurt my feelings. You're all tired from lunch. There's one.
Did you say dependent documentation was going to be controlled in the future, be controlled by plan and not on an overall case setting?
I did not say that.
That's a pain. That's a pain.
Yeah,
point.
I did. And Lindsay, I took note when you said that earlier, because that actually wasn't something that was on our roadmap. But it's a great idea. There's no reason we can't do it, and there's no reason we shouldn't be doing it. So I'm going to go back and talk to the team about that. Here's one over here.
So you talked about the ACA tracking of hours and that's only if you have the integrated system between the payroll and.
No, it's not.
How do you do
Even
that?
if you don't have the integration system with the payroll, if you have the ACA module turned on in your group, we can load files to get those hours worked. It's not only when you have the integrated system.
But if you have a substitute employee that's working, how you're tracking their hours if the hours aren't in the system?
Yeah, they have to be, you have to have it tracked somewhere that you can load into the system, or you can key it manually. We do have some groups that key substitutes manually. How about from the Steele employees, people who are using the system? Y'all got any questions you want to put me on the spot for? Lindsay, I knew I could count on her.
This one, we're actually going to resolve this one internally, but some of the location permissions, like if we have manufacturers with lots of different locations, and the HR user can only access that location. The follow-up queue doesn't have a filter by location.
Yeah, I have a backlog item for that already. I need to see where it is in the pipeline, because I know you reported that to us already.
Okay, just thank you.
It's a really complex system. It does a whole lot of stuff. And so I've got a pretty big backlog of things that have come in, and we work through them. And that's actually the most challenging part of my job, is balancing, what's most important, what's high priority, what needs to go in. And lots of times it depends on the time of year. If we're getting close to school enrollment season, or, the fall enrollment season, then I try to get things in quick before those times. And during those times I stop and we're gonna put everything on a hold.
Ruthie, this came up during a discussion that I was having during lunch, and I know personally for Steel, it's something that we're looking at as well, but do you have clients who store I-9 and W-4 information in the system? And is there any talk of like having digitized forms or things like that globally?
Yeah. Christine, that's a good question. It's something we have talked about for years. Part of it has been in, well, okay, but that's not really what we're in the business of. And the system really could be hacked to do it. They're just forms. As you know, we can fill out lots of different kinds of forms, from coverage election forms to benefit confirmations to application forms for some carriers. So we've thought there could be an onboarding process where the employee goes in like they're doing an enrollment. We collect the data and we fill out the form. And we actually do have a couple of clients who have kind of figured out a way to do that on their own. Okay, so just through form mapping. It is one of the things, though, that we're looking for one of those integration partnerships on. We're looking for the companies that say we can integrate for that we can send the employee directly into that if they haven't gone through that already as part of their onboarding process. So there's a couple of things, and if y'all want to talk about doing it, I can get you more details on how they did it, but it's possible. All right. Well, Katie, I'm sorry, I'm a little fast.
You mentioned that the HR experience is going to be available starting in 2022. What about the other improvements that you mentioned on the first slide? Can you go over that with us?
Yeah, sure. So virtual enrollment assistance, that's going to be out later this year before fourth quarter. So that means probably September when some of those changes, not the scheduling. The scheduling is still going to be in the 2022, but the other additions I talked about will be later this year. ACA improvements will be before filing season. That may be one of the few things that we actually release in the fourth quarter, because we have to have that ready before filing season starts in January. The post-enrollment beneficiaries that I talked about, those will be out in either 3 or 6 weeks, depending on how good my testing team does. The work is just about done. If they finish testing in the next 2 weeks, then it will be released in 2 weeks. Otherwise, it'll be released in 5 weeks. We work on 3-week development sprints and releases. Some of the other point of sale enrollment changes have come out this year already. There were things that we've been working on, but some of the improvements are already out there on different ways that we display riders, et cetera. And self-service account onboarding, I have a meeting with my engineers tomorrow to tell them what I want, and they're going to tell me how long it takes, and I'm going to say I need it there before fourth quarter. It's kind of how it works. It's funny, a lot of our development team are American citizens who came here from Russia. Most of them have gotten their citizenship, but they speak Russian to each other a lot. And I've worked there 12 years, so you'd think I'd understand some Russian, and I don't. I know da, I know yet. And the Russian language does not have the TH sound, so they can't say Ruthie, they say Rushi. So I hear Russian, 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 Rushi, Russian, 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 Rushi, and I go stick my head and I say, yes. What are you talking about me? And then I tell them that they have to do it faster. Any other questions? Do I hear other funny Russian stories?